So my name is Roberto, and my idea with sharing today is the power of female entrepreneurs to tear down barriers while building success. It's often been said that women are the most underutilized asset in the world. Studies have shown that the economic inclusion of women can spur overall economic growth and help families and children, communities, and even nations. But still, women face a range of challenges women face a range of challenges that keep them from being fully productive members of society. Women are often overrepresented in the least paid, most insecure, most vulnerable jobs, and even then, women are still unemployment for women is still 6% higher than for men. Entrepreneurship works as an important means for women to empower themselves and define their own economic prosperity. Women, whether they want to be whether they have discovered an opportunity that they thought needs a meeting, or whether they want to have more control over their working hours, entrepreneurship, the impact is substantial. According to the Boston Consulting Group, if men and women were to partake in entrepreneurship equally, global GDP could rise to as much as $1.5 trillion. But still, men have an easier time being entrepreneurs than women, and this is due to a variety of complex and varied reasons, be it from human capital and social capital they just cannot access to, and also implicit biases that they have to work with. Although 40% of new startups in the US are led by women, and China, 20% of new businesses are owned by women, and in the developing world, that number is between 40 to 50%. But even though 40% of new startups in the US are led by women, the total venture capital funding in 2017 that went to women-led startups is only 2%. And that is a number that is grim, and that is a number we can change. According to Dr. Dana Haynes, men founders tend to get promotional questions, or what could go right. They tend to get questions such as, how many customers are you expecting to get over the next few years? How much are you expected to grow over the next few years? Whereas women get preventive questions, or what could go wrong. They get questions such as, how are you going to retain the customers that you already have? And when you have promotional questions, you tend to get promotional answers. When you have preventive questions, you tend to give preventive answers, which leads investors to relate men-led startups to prosperity and growth, and women-led startups to stagnation. The implicit bias that we have comes from a very long history of development. There's several techniques to try to remove this implicit bias that we might have in our heads, such as showing counter-stereotypical examples, or just really encouraging oneself to not feel that implicit bias. But these techniques might work immediately, but they do not have a lasting effect. Our brains, the way our brains form associations and acquire them from a cultural environment, developed over long periods of time, most of which humans lived in an environment that was largely consistent. It was unlikely that our brains ever had to unlearn an association that was already made, because we lived in places that just didn't change. And so our brains never developed like a method for it to unlearn an association that was already done. But there is a technique that we can do that exists that removes all implicit bias from the equation, and it's called discretion elimination. So when you make an objective judgment with discrepancies, with discretion, there tend to be unintended discrepancies. So even if you really encourage yourself to not feel implicit bias, something in the back of your head that you might have no control over might sway your opinion. There is a reality show that's quite popular that has integrated this technique into its format. And it's very popular, you might have heard of it, it's called The Voice. So in The Voice, they have 4 judges. They're sitting in chairs facing away from the talent. And this is something that they also do in orchestras around the world. They have the judges, they have the performers sitting behind a curtain where you can't see them. And so the judges only get to hear the voices, the performance, the talents, and they do not get to be swayed by whatever unintended discrepancies they might hear from the way the person looks, their height, how beautiful they are, or whatever it is. This is an area of active study, and there's still a lot that can be done to improve on this. A lot of people are trying to innovate in this regard by implementing artificial intelligence to remove all subjective judgment from areas and industries that would benefit from objective judgments. But it matters a lot who gets to regulate this objective judgment. And so this takes you to my next point. And it is that our society markets and conditions technology to men. 3/4 of all tech roles are taken by men. And the image isn't a lot better in the business world, where women tend to be reluctant to either start a tech startup or to implement tech into their existing startups. As a matter of fact, out of all the businesses that exist in Silicon Valley, actually, only 3% of them belong to women. That is a number that can be improved. And that is because from a very young age, we condition technology to not feel familiar to women. And so oftentimes what happens is that women founders feel like tech just isn't for them, or it might be something so foreign that it might be a bit scary. But this is not how it should be. This is not what it could be. From a very young age, we put boys in an environment that's surrounded by tech. We make tech feel familiar to them, be it by giving them toys such as robots or consoles. We give them career prospects in STEM. We make it an availability to them. We tell them that they could be engineers, astronauts. And we create a stereotype in our society that men just naturally gravitate more towards math and science and girls do not, which is something that just isn't true. And it's something that we can change. We can challenge negative stereotypes. We have to adapt and improve our education to make tech more familiar and available to young girls. We could champion role models such as women that took on and conquered tech, such as the CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty, or the co-chair and founder of HTC, Chair Wang. We can make STEM seem like an available career choice for young girls everywhere. But tech isn't the only place where the human capital for female business owners is lacking. We also have to adapt the way that we promote business to young girls and young women everywhere. When you say the word entrepreneur, you might think of someone like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. And even if you think after a little while, you might finally think of Oprah Winfrey. But in addition to literal association, the words that we use to define an entrepreneur, such as risk-taking and aggressive, are also words that society relates to men. So a risk-taking aggressive man might be seen as confident or passionate. A risk-taking aggressive woman might be seen as pushy or unlikable. So, but luckily there's a new trend in entrepreneurship that bodes well with gender equality, and this is social entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship is when you have a social mission alongside a revenue model. So you might have heard of Tom Shoes, which is a social entrepreneurship that is led by men. But have you heard of Mary Quintero? Mary Quintero is a Panamanian CEO and founder of Undercover Boots. So a few years ago, Mary thought it was quite odd that in a country where it rains 7 months out of the year, it was so difficult to find a pair of good rain boots. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. And so 6 years ago, she started Undercover Boots as a way to not only create good rain boots, but also as a way to give back to society. So she worked around the concept of give back, don't exploit. And so her social mission helps protect the environment, helps protect animals and children in need. And now Mary sells to over 50 countries, all the way from Panama to Mozambique, to Azerbaijan, to Indonesia. Or you might have heard of Luz Mendoza. Luz created this app called Emmunia, which helps thousands of families all over the country keep track of their vaccines. She's helped thousands of people from getting preventable diseases, but just keeping track of their vaccine schedules. And so before Emmunia, Luz had no business knowledge. She was a nurse and she thought the business world had no interest in her. But her social mission had her diving deep into marketing tactics and accounting spreadsheets. And that is the key. When it's more than just economic profits, women sign up. If the content of the work itself is made more societally meaningful, women will enroll in droves. And the statistics in entrepreneurship back this up. Women are 17% more likely to start a social enterprise than men. And so the answer is clear. One way that we can use to reduce the gender gap is by making it easier and more accessible to start and sustain a social enterprise. As customers, we have the power to vote with our dollars. We can consume goods and services that have a social mission. And as investors, we could create funds that help and grow and sustain social enterprises at the seed, angel, and venture capital level. From the City of Knowledge Foundation and through our Canal de Empresarias program, we have helped thousands of female entrepreneurs by training them and working alongside them. And even though we give them all the human and financial capital they need, after the program, whenever we ask them what was most important to them from the program, every single time they say the same thing. It was the network of fellow businesswomen that work alongside me and the mentorship from successful businesswomen that helped me grow. And so working alongside these women, they created groups and together they innovated on problems they didn't even know they had. They reached new markets that they couldn't have gone before, and they all increased net worth, each one of them, by at least double. And so you could say that when groups of people, when groups of women work together, they're unstoppable, or one could say limitless. And so we've gone to where we are thanks to visionary men and women, people that thought of a more egalitarian world. And so we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to give our children and our grandchildren a more fair and equal world. And you might think you can't change the world, but you can change your world. You can change your life. And I want to encourage you to do that, because the future isn't somewhere you're going to. The future is something you create. Thanks for coming to TED Talk.